I will start off with the technical stuff, and then like the big stuff, and then we'll get going. But because I know everyone, I'm gonna say if you want to have your video on and hang out with us, please do. And if you don't, don't. If you want to eat snacks, like eat snacks. I know that there are so many meetings and Zoomings that happen right now, so I just want y'all to be comfortable and have fun. And because I know all of you so far, I will say that I highly encourage the chat convo, and I'm not going to read my own work tonight because I wanted to really be the way that I've been thinking about the current moment with all of this really important work and change that's being done and conversations that are being raised and change that's being acted on. I've been doing a lot of thinking about engaging in that moment, and I didn't really feel like tonight was the right night to be reading my own work. I really didn't feel like my own voice was the most important one that needed to be heard. So I'm going to read just a sample of Black writers who I love, and I would encourage everyone here to buy their books and have that be a way to support them. I feel like if you have already made donations, that's amazing. If you're looking for opportunities to make donations, the Seattle's Black Lives Matter chapter is a great option. The Black Joy Experience is doing some great work with Black musicians and artists. There's so many ways of supporting. So donate to organizations if you can. Buy books. Buy these writers if you can, and show up in the ways that are important to you. That's, I think, what I'll say to that end. So I'm gonna just kind of read some Black writers who I love, and I wasn't planning on doing a lot. I don't often spiel when I give readings, so this is a little bit unusual for me. So I can talk a little bit about what these writers mean to me, but I won't necessarily go into a lot of detail. But if you have questions, because we're a small group, I would love to make this as engaging as possible. So if you have questions that you want me to talk about with relation to these writers, drop them in the chat. Or if you have these writers and there are poems that you love by them and you would want me to read one of those poems, I can just take requests and say, oh yeah, I'll read that poem by this person if I can find it. Or if you have a poem by a Black writer who you love and you'd want to share, I'd love for that too. So I'm gonna start off with maybe like 25 minutes or so, just like reading some good things just to bask in some words. But if you want to jump in and read a thing, jump in and read a thing, ask questions, and then we can just chat if we want to chat, and if we don't want to chat, we don't have to chat. But that's kind of my plan. Does that sound nice for everyone? I feel like I just want to make this really community oriented tonight because we're a small group who I adore. I got some claps, got some love it's. Great.
Sounds great, Abby.
Awesome, cool, thanks, Kelly. Cool, okay, so I'm just gonna read some words. And I'm going to not have the stack of books drop on the glass of water, so they're just gonna live here. I am going to start with an extract from Aimé Césaire's Notebook of a Return to the Native Land. I can hold up the books. Buy this book if you don't have it. So this is a book in translation. It's translated by Clayton Eshelman and Annette Smith. And I believe, right? Yes. And Aimé Césaire was one of the founders of the Negritude movement, which came out of the 1930s. And I first stumbled across this book in a class on Francophone literature. I studied English and French and Italian in undergrad, and I was taking this class that focused on like outside of the white French canon, which introduced me to a lot of writers who were complicating the really terrible colonialist narrative, because France's history is not great. It's had a lot of colonizing, and it's had a lot of terrible people doing terrible things, terrible people. Hey Jay, Welcome. We're having a chat. I'm gonna read some works by Black writers who I love tonight, and if you have others that you want to share or requests for me to jump in with, please feel free. There's a chat going, and there's videos. Eat some snacks. Great. Anyway, so I'm gonna read an extract from Aimé Césaire's Notebook of a Return to the Native Land. This is from pretty early on in the book, but I really love the use of lists and the complications and the really bodily imagery that this section introduces. I would rediscover the secret of great communications and great combustions. I would say storm. I would say river. I would say tornado. I would say leaf. I would say tree. I would be drenched by all rains, moistened by all dews. I would roll like frenetic blood on the slow current of the eye of words, turned into mad horses, into fresh children, into clots, into curfew, into vestiges of temples, into precious stones remote enough to discourage miners. Whoever would not understand me would not understand any better the roaring of a tiger. And you ghosts rise blue from alchemy, from a forest of hunted beasts, of twisted machines, of a jujube tree, of rotten flesh, of a basket of oysters, of eyes, of a network of straps in the beautiful sisal of human skin. I would have words vast enough to contain you, and you, earth, you taught earth drunk, earth great vulva raised to the sun, earth great delirium of God's mentula, savage earth arisen from the storerooms of the sea, a clump of cecropia in your mouth, earth whose tempestuous face I can only compare to the virgin and foolish forest, which were it in my power, I would show in guise of a face to the undeciphering eyes of men. All I would need is a mouthful of Jaculi milk to discover in you always as distant as a mirage, 1,000 times more native and made golden by a sun that no prison divides. The earth where everything is free and fraternal, my earth. Wow. Like the list, the power, like the language, just like the evolution of how these things spiral, creates just really important story and narrative and history and language. So that's Aimé Césaire. Good chat commentary, everyone. Thanks. I am right there with you. Cool. Next, I'm going to share a couple poems from Shane Mcrae. I don't know if y'all are familiar with his work. This is from one of his first books, maybe his first book, in fact, Mule, Shane Mcrae. And he plays a lot with syntax and with image and how these images connect, especially with relation to language and caesura, which is the space between lines on the page. So that's always been really interesting for me to think about form and how form can complicate and construct additional narratives around the poem itself. The cardinal is the marriage bird. The cardinal is the marriage bird and flies a flash of dusk, becomes, forgets, becomes, again the body of the cardinal in the sunlight in the day. Imagine otherwise the cardinal in the room, the sunlight in the room in the day, the sunlight on the snow like frosted glass, the cardinal in the snow as clear as if it were on the inside of the window. And not in the world the cardinal is, the marriage bird and flies, in the sunlight on the snow, between the sunlight and the snow, a shadow on the snow, but still, the sunlight on the snow. Imagine otherwise, the cardinal on the windowsill, and flies, a flash of shadow, and the cardinal is the shadow bird, a flash of wound, the wound bird evergreen to evergreen, wound leaping evergreen to evergreen. Imagine welcoming the wound. And then from the same book, this is In the Garden of the Ghosts of the Garden. And we divorced in water, in a garden, in the pond, in the garden, in the pond, up to our ankles in the mud and neck deep in the water. And we stood in the water. We held our arms above our heads for 40 days, supported by the water and weighed down by the water. And we didn't drink for fear that we would leave ourselves no water to stand in. And we didn't piss for fear that we would pollute the water and have no water to drink. Stood 40 days in the pond. Nothing was left of the garden but the pond. No house, no flowers, no fence, no bushes, no road to where a house would be. The garden and you and me. We felt our bones disintegrating in the sun and freezing back, together wrong. In the night sky was one half solid white and one half solid black and gave no light. And we each morning woke to different bodies frozen back, together wrong inside for 40 days. We stood in the water, in the mud, in the hole, in the garden of the ghosts of the garden, waiting to be exiled from the garden as even the water disappeared. The last trace of the garden as even the water disappeared. The last trace of the garden, waiting to be exiled from the garden as even the water disappeared. And by the 41st day it was gone, still, hands in the air. We waited there for anyone to punish us. Oh, just gets like every time, like the list and how it expands and then how it just like twists at the end is just like so powerful and fascinating. Anyway, so Mule, Shane Mcrae, buy the book if you want it. If you don't, I'd also encourage you guys all, because we're here tonight with Island Books, so big shout out to them. Colleen, thank you for having me and for having us here. That if you like the books that you are hearing me read from, to encourage you to buy them, and I'll recap at the end what I've shared. I know that whether or not things are always in stock, Colleen, I know you're tracking them down, so hopefully they'll either be on the shelves or pre-orderable too. Yes, thumbs up. Love that.
Yes, and I'm going to send an email out after the event to everyone who is registered of links to buy the books of the ones that are available, because there's some, like Shane Mcrae's book, that is only available straight from the press, and then when I go look further into it, they're like reprinting and backordered. So poetry books are, the book business is already complicated in terms of getting books in. Poetry books are even more deprioritized and complicated. So I'm going to link the ones that are going to be the most available in, maybe, because some it's looking like, wow, this might take like 3 months to get in. So maybe buy from Open Books if that's the case.
Open Books is great, as is Island Books. And I would also say that, for some of these writers, like with Shane's, for example, he has many more recent books. This is just one of his that I have and have loved. So it's also possible, if you like his writer, that like you might be able to track down other books by these writers that are more accessible because they're more recent. So more possibilities. Cool. Let's keep going, shall we? The Black Maria. Has anyone ever heard of this book before? It's by Arcelis Yermai. I'm gonna hold it up. Oh yeah, Cody has gotten me a thumbs up, which is awesome. This book is, and Jay, yes, I love it. This book is really interesting. It's structured in these parts, and it captures these different voices, and it deals with Eritrean history and different time frames, so different kinds of chronologies and different kinds of voices and different ghosts that appear across the course of the book, and it is absolutely stunning and heartbreaking. So I wanted to share a couple of poems from this book. This one is perhaps less listy and slightly more narrative than some of the others that I've shared, but it also is really distilled in its images, which I think is also the space that it opens is really beautiful. So this is from an early on section, Prayer and the Letter to the Dead. The typewriter hammers out the end of its ribbon as you, one by one, go and go and go, outlasted by memory, by ink, the patience of the paper where the dark words buck like fish in air. I, the living, which is my portrait, the right hand bleeding the page for its marrow marks, or the silence my left hand inherits. While the room is still dry here, while the page is still white, still here, more sure than sea, more still than alive, while the air is now touching the dark and funny fruit of your eyebrows, where it is quiet enough for me to hear the small sighing of your shoes lift up into the old and broken boat, while the small hands of water wave, each one waving its blue handkerchief, then the gentle flutter of luck and tears. We all know what will happen next. Do not go. But if you must, risking what you will, then in a language that is my first but not your first, and with what I know and do not know, I will try to build a shore for you here, a landing place, here where the paper dreams that you will last. Our parents and our grandparents taught us in the school of dreaming, the discipline of dreaming. It is my work to revise and revise, even as you are filling my eyes now, and you are filling the sea, courages, and the fishermen drop their veils into your grave. So that was from the first section, which talks a lot about water and captures these voices of water and these voices of these multiple figures that carry itself through the first section. And then I want to share with you part of the last section, which is this poem called The Black Marita, the titular poem. And it is really powerful. I think it captures a lot of different themes across the course of the book. So I wanted to share it so that you would have it in you as well. The Black Maria. Black the raven, black the dapples on the moon and horses, black sleep of the night and the night's idea, black the piano, white its teeth, but black its gums and mind with which we serenade the Black Maria. And the night, wearing its special silver, serenades us too, with metaphors for how the body makes. Semen stars, egg moon, 1600s. European ships heave fatly with the weight of black grief, black flesh, black people across the sea. The astronomers think the moon's dark marks are also seas and call them the Black Maria. Meanwhile, the Italian Riccioli naming the seas according to his language and sensibilities. Riccioli naming the dark fur of the moon, mare cognitum, mare crisium, mare fecunditatis, sea that has become known, sea of crises, sea of fertility. If it is up to Riccioli, then these are the names of the three Black Maria. I call the sea Mar. I call the sea Bari. I call the moon Luna. But far is my word for both you and the moon. I heard a story once of a woman in the Sahara who, for years, carried a single page of Anna Karenina that she read over and over, the long combers of print repeating like the waves of the Black Maria. Language is something like this, a hard studying of cells under a microscope, cells on their way to becoming other things, a person, a book, a moon, Above the bowl, I crack the egg of this idea, yolk from clear. Which is it? Which is not it? Does moon name the whole thing, or just the side we know, the side made dark with the Black Maria? How language is an asha tree, a fool that grows everywhere, a snake shedding its skin. A bowl of teeth, a kitchen plate of shadow and ruins like the moon. Moon says, please God, crowd my loneliness with stars. But the star's life is short compared to moon's. There is always a funeral. Moon is always wearing the veil of the Black Maria. However pretty the sound, it was a misidentification to name the basalt basins and craters the Black Maria of the moon. If this is a poem about misseeing, Renisha McBride, Trayvon Martin, Rekia Boyd, then these are also three of the names of the Black Maria. Naming, however kind, is always an act of estrangement. To put into language that which can't be put. And someone who does not love you cannot name you right, and even moon can't carry the moon. If this is a poem about estrangement and waters made dark with millions of names and bodies, the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean and Caribbean seas, the Mississippi, then these are also the names of the Black Maria. For days, the beautiful child Emmett swells into Tallahatchie. Even now, the moon paints his face with Emmett's impetition. Open casket of the night, somebody's child, our much more than the moon. Like every time, just like this book. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow. Time flies because there's so many poems to read and so little time to read them in. There's just so many things I want to share with you all. Okay. I think I'm going to read next Justin Philip Reed is amazing. His book Indecency was a book that was the first book in a while that blew my mind when I read it. Last year, 2 years ago? When did it come out? 2018. Anyway, it blew my mind. So I wanted to read a poem. And his most recent book, Malevolent Volume, is also really powerful. I just tore through it this weekend. So I would also encourage you to take a look at this one. But I think for the sake of time and joy, because I just am wanting to be reading joy right now, I'm going to read from Indecency. And yes, which cover, Cody? This one or this one? He does have really good covers, both of them. They're both really good. Cool. I'm going to read from Indecency something I was talking with a friend of mine about this on Sunday, but it's something I've been thinking about recently. On life as an exercise in preparing to die. When once again you won't make it home in order to confirm, you imagine the aunt's large body, which is so much of who she was to you and why you rarely perceived her without a cast or crutch or patience bracelet, with its many secret, unsexual creases, compactly folded, ceremoniously, like a handkerchief or spotted gauze, into the coffin. Does the mind conjure forth for the scene a scent? You think you wouldn't recognize formaldehyde, nor would any undertaker with a budget for carnations allow the smell to linger. There's a reason it is the funeral flower. As well, carnation once referred to the color of flesh. Beyond the black and white meats, the bloody organs arrange a bouquet of crushed roses, paling and exhausted. You think you know everyone you love will be reduced to somatic allegory, and that knowing so is key to persisting. How you can, during the horror film, control the heart's response by recalling where this or that knife strike will fall. The monster killer will appear in the medicine cabinet mirror. The flesh will tear like drenched paper. The story, it just like, it goes and expands, and it starts in one place and it ends in somewhere completely different. And I think that's just like why his poems always take me on such a journey. So Justin Phillip Reed, buy the book, if not for the book cover alone. Although I think if you want to know more about the book covers, the designer is listed in the materials, which is kind of fun. I am going to read from, like, looking at the time, I think I'm going to read from 2 more writers, though I do have more in my stack. I'm going to read from next from Ashley Tolliver's Spectra. This was a book which is also like, this cover just like blows me away every time. This was a book that was recommended to me this year, and I gobbled it up, and it was something that I wasn't expecting, but I really appreciate how the body and outside the body combine into one space, and how questions of time are also very fluid. So I'm going to read from the second section, which is called Ideal Machine. And
don't worry so much about time. We're okay. It's only
okay.
6:30.
That's true. I know, but you know, if people want to talk or like read things. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
And thank you guys all for being here too. It's nice to see names and faces. And thanks for participating in the chat also. That's a lot of fun to see. Oh, thanks, Jay. Cool. I don't know if y'all are having fun, but I'm just like reading poems to you guys, and it's really making my heart sing. So thanks for being here tonight. Okay, I'm going to read from Spectra. This is from the second section called Ideal Machine, which asks questions of a daughter who does and does not yet exist. So again, playing with that notion of time, and playing also with image. There's a moth figure that appears throughout this section too, which creates really powerful contrasts with the body, the human body. Dear daughter, you lived. Here is where I take you, behind the eyes, a glistening star. Here is where I take you, bone thing I made, a gift. Pull it out, star in me, salt bright and still. Listen, how the cut is made across my face could move any feeling. Here's the sight I've dog-eared for you, taught as any waiting, my sudden fold of luck, pinched lightning. We can't put our hands on, but you do. My brain arriving through the darkness like streets mapping out. This mine, this mine, this mine. In future rites, I lie down on the operating table, glassy and overdue. The surgeons take roll in choirs, hands like night swimmers, bad water below the sea. Under lightest implication, the body breaks through. Under lightest implication, the crocuses push through peat as a gesture for belief. Hourglass and tool. Meadow sharpened to blade. On the last day, the light, so easy to breathe. Hustle star, weaving the darkness around. A little let on the line and faces go under a long way. And then that poem ends and also begins with this image of this one's the pelvis. Yeah, this one's the pelvis image, not the mouth. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna read more from Ashley because I'm feeling it right now. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna keep going. This is also from that section. Dear Lepidoptera, I can't stop saying your name. Dear optic nerve, you flatten like a copper tilled wide against the tracks. I want to show you how light scatters my daughter's bedroom, her face into unknowing. Dear optic nerve, dear crushed penny, in the dark I watch explosions, axons firing like mortars. I count them, low-hanging fireworks, gristle and verve. I press my face to the glass. I slim to wrench my one good eye over the room like a loaded drink. Everything whirs into focus, then out, the air and my face behind it, unwinding the gauze scrim on the scene. We could spend years like this, just you and I together in the same crowded bar, spinning our whiskey for weeks before knocking them back one by one. The lamplight growing vague, then dim. Where is your face? I say to the dark. Look, everything is turning into everything else. Moth shuttled inside, an empty glass, paper slid over the mouth. That's Ashley Tolliver from her book Spectra. And let's see. I am going to read next from Jeffrey Davis, this is his most recent book, Night Angler, which is out from BOA. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably pause here, and then we can kind of take the evening where we want it to go. And I do have other books that I can share, but I'll kind of wrap up here, and then we can kind of leave it up to like audience's choice in terms of keep going or chat or see what happens next. I'll read two poems of Jeffrey's, and I am going to start in the middle of the book and then go back to the beginning. He works a lot with fatherhood and sonhood, I guess. So I think it's always really beautiful to see how he writes about that and the way he captures relationship of different generations, this kind of transgenerational perspective across the course of one book, and how he positions himself in relation to that. His first book was much more about his own relationship and his own experience, I think, with his father. And this book is a balancing a little bit between his relationship with his father and his relationship as a father with his son. So it's fascinating if you like those family stories. He's a really great place for it. I have my father's hands. The heart has wanted so much from them, so much for them. A few seasons strung together without needing to fear the things they've torn down. No matter that they shade the eyes under a sky that shatters with each tone of desire. No matter that they received the tongue's forgiveness. No amount of rain can demonster their act of punching holes into the living room walls. No prayer called from above can undo the child's memory of the bird or them hallelujahing its broken body into fire. They've mended cages long enough to feel everything and nothing, perched on the verge of change. Gentleness urged the dream of two separate touches, but they keep burying in the forest the animals they have rescued from the forest. All this despite love, which begot today and another window opened onto another autumn morning's view, and so many brittle things darting in and out of shadow. All this despite despair, which begot yesterday and the sound a river makes with memory turned against you, and the many notes that can break a thought into still sharper shards of thinking. And yet, the old wish, to build belonging from the daily stone grief of family, each slab fitted and refitted with the gravity of tomorrow, dry stacked. Here a coursing wall, there a slanted house. The heart swears a form can sing these hands back their best moments. The heart refuses a knell to sigh with their final relief. And then I'm going to share the first poem of the first section, which is in 2 parts, and it's called The Fidelity of Water. 1. Thousands of miles from home, you wake in a cheap hotel with thirst so urgent you have no choice but to find the bathroom faucet with your mouth, drink deep, and understand the daily sigh made by bodies everywhere in this small town. Your new cushy job gives you bottled artesian water, which you consider as you taste the tap. Used to be, there was no good distance between this rivery tang and your fluid desires. Used to be, you'd shove aside a sweaty friend or jab a sibling for the first shot at placing lips to the only neighborhood source. Used to be no future in yearning. Feel how far you've come? 2. Today a flood, and you see the risk in proximity, in life stretched by loving both a river and the rain. To watch what feeds you run dangerous, the biblical possibility of nurture rising into a final rage. Father rain, mother river. When it pours, and you love when it pours, this river turns tannic with a turbulence you can recognize as home. Mother rain, father river. But what course isn't threatened when the right season licks its lips? What epic confluence can avoid the violence of giving and taking such shape? Mother, father, river rain. If given the chance, you too will empty or swell, will lay claim to every unrooted thing in the name of a love you learned from flood. That's Jeffrey Davis. And his face is on the cover, so this is Jeffrey Davis, in fact. Awesome. I'm going to pause there. I want to say thank you guys all for being here and for Colleen for having me tonight. And reminders to buy these writers' books and to donate to organizations if you can, and to use your voice when you can. It's not always easy, but use it in the ways that are important. Books that we love tonight. Started off with Aimé Césaire, Notebook of Return to Native Land. Super important work. Seminal, important. Mule, Shane Mcrae, very important. Black Maria, so important. All these books are really important. Okay, that's by Arcelis Hirmai. I don't know if I said her name before. Black Maria, Arcelis Hirmai. Justin Philip Reed, Indecency and the Malevolent Volume. Ashley Tolliver's Spectra. Jeffrey Davis, Night Angler. And what a joy to be able to just like read writing that I love and share it with everyone. Thank you for indulging me in this hour. I'll also hold up 2 more books that I didn't read from that are super amazing. Terrence Hayes, American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. Wow, beautiful, important. And White Blood by Kiki Petrosino. This is her most recent book. It is so intense and so essential. So I encourage you to read it. And then I will read a delight from Ross Gay, The Book of Delights. He wrote these little snippets. And I thought I would read, I'll leave it up to audience choice. Number 22, Lily on the Pants, which is beautiful, about lilies. And then number 62, The Purple Cornets of Spring. So if the first person to type a number into the chat, 22 or 62, will win. 2022. All right, Cody, for you. Thank you. I'll be the lily for you, Cody. Lily on the Pants. Or was it an iris gladdening the blue denim on the upper thigh of the young woman exiting the Salvation Army with a few kids and 2 plastic bags stuffed to the gills in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, where I stopped to procure a cheap pair of sweatpants after a solid 2 hours of pickup at the Y next door, which turned out to be half off, Black Friday and all, $2.50. I always mix them up. I know I should know, given that a lily was the first flower I planted in my garden, and I pray to it daily in the 4 to 6 weeks that it offers up its pinkish speckling by getting on my knees and pushing my face in, which, yes, is also a kind of kissing, as I tend to pucker my lips and close my eyes. And if you get close enough, you'd probably hear some minute slurping between us. And for some reason, I wish to deploy the verb drowning, which, in addition to being a cliche, implies a particular kind of death. And I will follow the current of that verb to suggest that the flower kissing, moving so close to another living and breathing thing's breath, which in this case is that of the lily I planted 6 years ago, will in fact kill you with delight, will annihilate you with delight, will end the life you had previously led before kneeling here and breathing the breathing thing's breath, and the lily will resurrect you too, your lips and nose lit with gold dust, your face and fingers smelling faintly all day of where they've been. Amen. Thanks everyone for being here tonight, spending this time conversing, talking, reading poems and words. Killeen, thanks so much. It's been such a joy to have this time with you, and I hope everyone has a good, restful, word-filled evening.